Animation, especially good animation or considerably bad animations, could be both considered in judging an anime whether it's good or bad. But there's one thing that could help in that judge, and that is the plot. Considering the plot of an anime, you could decide whether the anime is good or bad, even though the animation isn't as good or is just dog shit. For example, let's talk about Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball really doesn't stand out in animation. If you look at the Dragon Ball correctly, most of the fights are just freeze frames of the same like figure of like Goku punching or him kicking, played over and over again and adding a few dashes and all. But what we don't come there for is not the animation. Neither is it the plot. What we come there for is to see an OP guy fight random people, which you could also consider plot but not mainly plot. Now moving on to other animes that you could not consider watching for plot but mainly watching it for the animation itself. Let's talk about Gamers is an anime about a group of teenagers who play games, and there's a lot of random stuff that happens. To me, I didn't really the plot didn't really matter to me. But if you just look at the animation itself, you could tell that this was a good animation team that ran this, even though the plot wasn't really what you came to the anime for. Now, let's talk about the reason why Seven Deadly Sins has a 50-50 chance of it either failing or succeeding, depending on what's going on right now. So looking at Seven Deadly Sins, there's one thing you could use to describe it if you don't watch it for the plot, and that you could describe that as dog shit. Now, seeing as I've already read the manga for Seven Deadly Sins, I know what this season is coming down to. I could say that if this season isn't handled correctly, this could be either the best or the worst season, and that could be said for any other section of Seven Deadly Sins, but mainly this season, because this is where the plot really lays down. This is where you get most of the reveals and most of the secrets that you'll find in the Seven Deadly Sins. Now, one thing that's butchered in Seven Deadly Sins is the fact that they censored the blood. Even though this really isn't that big of a deal, is the fact that it was changed from blood to cum. Now, looking at this, you could say, oh, it's just white. But it's the fact that it wasn't all the blood that was censored. Most of the blood, not most of the blood, but little parts of the blood wasn't censored, which means that you didn't even go all the way in to try to censor it. So there isn't really that big of a deal if it's uncensored, but it was just censored. And seeing as it was colored white, it doesn't really add the impact or the satisfaction of the fight you see. Also, the animations itself is just not as good. Now, seeing Meliodas and Ban fight the different demons in episode 1 and episode 2, we see how even though they kick and punch as much as physically possible for them, the impact of the hits and the punches don't come in as they regularly do. Like, for example, let's see the fight between Meliodas and Freudrin. Look at this slap that Meliodas gave Freudrin. Now look at this punch that he gave another demon. As you can see, the hits aren't really as impactful as they should be. One slap is more powerful than the other and has more impact, while this one just hits him and then it practically doesn't do anything. Now let's move on to how it looks, like just how the demons look right now. As you can see, the animations aren't horrible. It's just the way the impacts and the censoring of the blood. I feel like if it wasn't that censored, or if the impact actually hits, it won't be as horrible as it is. Also, they have a problem of not animating them completely. Instead, animating a still figure and make them slide across. Like, look at Meliodas and Ban fight, and also this duplicate of a demon approaching them. Now, even if the animation wasn't top-notch quality, we could already say that there's a reason why it's this bad, and there's a reason why it's not doing so well. One reason you could say it's not doing so well is the fact that why did you start off the season, the most hyped season? I feel like this is going to be the best season of Seven Deadly Sins, and I feel like it was the most hyped for me, and it started off with a filler. Why would you start off as a filler and then go into the main content in episode 2? If you start stuff off as fillers, it's just not as good. Now look at what Boruto is. What's happening with Boruto? Boruto is like, I would say, at least 50% filler, and this is butchering the anime. Now, if you ask anyone if you like the Boruto anime, they'll tell you to rather scrape out their eyes than actually watch the Boruto anime. The animation is good. Now we can see the difference between having a good plot and having good animations. It's a good balance. Seeing as that most animators from the company that animates both Boruto and Black Clover, most of the animators were pulled into Boruto. That's why Boruto's animation looks so good. Now let's look at Black Clover. From the beginning, you couldn't really call Black Clover's animation stellar. It was just average at best, but people still were drawn to the anime because of the plot of the Black Clover. Now let's see, if you ask anybody, or even let me ask you yourselves now watching this video, comment down below whether you prefer watching Boruto or Black Clover. Now, if I'm pretty sure everyone's going to say Black Clover rather than Boruto, unless you really love Naruto. But now let's keep on going to Seven Deadly Sins. Now the reason why Seven Deadly Sins animation is not as good as it was in season 1 and season 2, it's mainly because the animation company is swapped. And I feel like recently, if an animation company like doesn't do the same anime over and over again, like what happened with One Punch Man, it doesn't really look as good, or people don't normally adapt to how good it normally looks. Now what happened was because of the how badly the Seven Deadly Sins movie performed. The company refused to reanimate season 3. Now they have like a very like close window. Let's say they brought it back to them, they brought it to this current animation company in a very short amount of time, so they didn't have enough time to animate it as good as they possibly could. So let's see how later down the line it's possible it might improve like One Punch Man's, or if it's very possible that it might even get better than last season's, hopefully, because you know how anime works. If the anime doesn't do well, then the anime isn't going to get made unless everyone just praises anime. One thing that could save Seven Deadly Sins right now is if the whole anime season finishes and everyone binges it on Netflix. So even though it's not as good as it's probably going to be in the future, let's just hope and let's all try and support the anime still, because it's probably going to not do as well if we all just criticize it and still not watch it, because what really counts is the views. So if you enjoyed the video, down there, peace.